Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. We're here to explore the moments when faith feels thin and God feels distant, yet His truth remains our anchor. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. And as we journey together, comment below with your favorite Bible promise or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window, perhaps late at night, the world outside hushed. Inside, your heart feels anything but quiet. It's loud with questions you've whispered into the darkness, prayers sent heavenward that seem to have met only silence. You've poured out your longing, your need, your confusion, maybe even your frustration. You've read the promises, clung to the hope, but the reality of your situation feels stubbornly unchanged. The waiting weighs heavy. It's the job you didn't get, the relationship that hasn't healed, the breakthrough that never came, the physical pain that persists, the financial strain that tightens its grip, the dream that feels further away than ever. It's standing at a closed door, key in hand, but the lock won't turn, and there's no instruction manual for this pause. You look around and see others' doors opening, their prayers seemingly answered with swiftness and clarity, while yours remains shut, a stark symbol of a life on hold. Maybe you've asked God, "Are you there? Do you hear me?" Why the silence? Why the delay? This isn't a surface-level frustration. It digs deep, touching fears about being forgotten, overlooked, or perhaps that your faith isn't strong enough. This moment of quiet desperation, this raw honesty before God, it's a sacred space. Even if it feels lonely, it's the wilderness where many believers find themselves, wrestling with trust when the path forward is unclear. But what if this waiting, this silence, isn't an absence of God, but a different kind of presence? What if the stillness holds a hidden purpose? If you feel unseen in your waiting, misunderstood in your struggle, and weary from the silence, this message is for you. It's an invitation to look deeper, to listen closer, and to rediscover trust in the God who holds every moment, even the ones that feel impossibly long. It feels like walking through a valley you didn't choose, with shadows stretching long and no visible mountaintop in sight. The oil lamp of your hope flickers, needing refilling in the dark. Every whispered prayer feels like a single grain of sand in an ocean of unanswered pleas. Yet, faith, even a mustard seed, reminds us that the smallest things can hold the greatest power. The fear of being forgotten feels immense, a heavy stone upon your chest. Has God's promise simply bypassed you? Are you somehow less deserving of His swift hand? The world says, move on, find another door. But your spirit clings stubbornly to the belief that God is good, even when goodness feels like a distant echo. This tension, this beautiful, agonizing space between promise and provision, is where trust learns to breathe, not by sight, but by sheer, stubborn faith in the character of the one who is silent. It's here, in the unexpected stillness, that we are called to pause, to remember that sometimes the greatest work God does in us is not in changing our circumstances, but in changing us within them. The silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's simply loud with the sound of God working behind the scenes, weaving a tapestry you cannot yet see. It's in this quiet wrestling that the roots of true, resilient trust grow deep. watered by tears, and strengthened by unanswered questions held in faith. You stand before that door, not a door of wooden paint, but a circumstance, a season, a specific prayer left unanswered that feels as solid and unyielding as reinforced steel. You have knocked, a gentle tap turning into a desperate pounding. You have rattled the handle, testing every angle, searching for a give, a hidden latch, any sign of movement. You have sat down on the floor in despair, the cold seeping through you, the weight of stillness crushing. And then, because faith is a stubborn ember, you have gotten back up to try again. One more push, one more whisper of hope against the silent barrier. This feeling of being halted, suspended before an obstacle that human effort cannot overcome, is profoundly humbling. It is also deeply frustrating. The world keeps spinning. People move forward. Opportunities arise for others. Time marches on. But you feel frozen in time, unable to move forward, unable to go back to where things made sense. This challenges everything we think we know about progress, about control, about the linear path we assume life should take. It specifically challenges our expectation that faith should immediately clear the path, that a sincere prayer is a guaranteed key. When the door remains shut, the soul whispers, "Maybe I wasn't heard. Maybe I was denied." This isn't just a delay. In the raw, exposed heart, it feels like a denial. You remember the parables, the promises of mountains moving, of doors opening for those who knock. So you knock harder, you pray louder, you push with all your might until exhaustion replaces expectation, and the silence feels like a definitive no. The fear creeps in, the fear of being forgotten, of your deepest longings being overlooked, of your faith being somehow insufficient to unlock the next chapter. This fear is a heavy cloak, muffling the voice of trust, amplifying the echoes of doubt. You wonder if you misinterpreted the signs, if you were wrong about the path, if you simply aren't worthy of what lies beyond. The closed door becomes a mirror, reflecting back insecurities you didn't know were there. But there is a deeper spiritual insight waiting to be uncovered in the stillness before the shut door. This resistance isn't necessarily opposition from God, but potentially preparation by God. What if this waiting isn't a wall meant to stop you, but a necessary pause designed to strengthen you? Like a seed waiting in the dark earth, gathering itself before cracking open towards the light. What if this quiet season is meant to reroute you, guiding your gaze towards a path you hadn't considered, a path God sees clearly, even if it's invisible to you? It's a gentle paradox. Freedom sometimes requires restriction. True progress can be found not in pushing forward, but in standing still and learning the landscape around you. Perhaps the closed door is protecting you from something you don't yet see. A storm just beyond the threshold, a path that looks appealing, but leads to barren ground. Perhaps it is preparing you for something you aren't yet ready for, strengthening your resolve, deepening your reliance on Him, equipping you with lessons only learned in the quiet waiting room of faith. This season isn't barren. It's fertile ground for resilience, for patience, for a dependence on God that doesn't rely on visible movement. It teaches you to find provision in the wilderness, manna provided daily, sustenance that doesn't come from pushing open the next door yourself, but from trusting the One who walks with you through the dry places. The call to reflection here is quiet but profound. What if this season of stillness of facing the unyielding door is less about the door itself and more about the journey happening within you. Is it possible that the God who promised to finish the work He started in you is using this very obstacle, this perceived denial, to chip away at the parts of you that need refining? Can you trust that the hand that closes the door is the same hand that holds your future, that orchestrates divine timing, that sees the entire landscape while you can only see the immediate barrier? He's not asking for your strength to break down the door. He's asking for your surrender in trusting His plan, even when the view is blocked and the way forward is hidden. It's a quiet call to shift your focus from the stubborn door to the faithful door opener, and to find peace not in the outcome, but in His presence, in the waiting. You sit on the edge of the bed, phone dark in your hand, the weight of unspoken prayers heavy in the air around you. Another day fades, and the prayer you whispered, maybe a desperate plea, a raw confession, or just a tired sigh, feels lost somewhere between the ceiling and the quiet night sky. Is God even listening? The question forms a knot in your stomach, tight and persistent. You poured out your soul, laid bare the tangled mess inside, begged for a sign, a nudge. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." And the silence that answers feels vast, like a desert stretching in every direction. It's a silence that isn't empty, but filled with the echoes of your own doubt. Did you pray right? Was your faith strong enough? Are you somehow unworthy of His attention? This internal questioning feels like walking through a wilderness where the compass spins wildly, pointing nowhere. Each unanswered prayer can feel like a door closing, leading you to wonder if your voice is simply too small to traverse the distance to heaven. The wind outside might tap against the window pane, a gentle rhythm, but even that feels like just wind, not the divine whisper you long for. But the profound, quiet truth that meets you in this silence is that God's listening doesn't always sound like an immediate booming reply. It's a different kind of listening. He is not absent in the quiet. He is present in ways your current expectation might be blinding you to. Think of the wilderness where prophets waited, not for thunder, but for a still, small voice. The silence is not proof He isn't hearing. It can sometimes be an invitation to listen differently, to deepen your spiritual ear beyond the obvious and the immediate. The Scriptures whisper this truth into the void. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. Psalm 34:17. He hears every single cry, the ones shouted in desperation and the ones that are merely groans the heart cannot articulate. Even when words fail, the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groans that words cannot express. Romans 8:26, NIV. God hears the unformed prayers, the deep ache, the silent tears that fall in the quiet moments. The silence you perceive is perhaps not an empty void, but a canvas upon which God paints His subtler answers. He hears, and His response often arrives not as a dramatic intervention, but as a profound, unshakable peace in the storm, like oil poured on troubled waters. It comes as a quiet nudge in your spirit, guiding your next step. It surfaces as wisdom gleaned from His Word, suddenly illuminating your path like a lamp in the darkness. It appears in the unexpected encouragement from a friend, a ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds. His communication is often woven into the fabric of life itself, more intricate and profound than a simple yes or no. Your call to reflection now is not to question if He hears, but to consider, how are you practicing listening? Can you train your heart to discern God's response, not just in the earth-shaking answers you crave, but in the gentle presence, the subtle guidance, the quiet assurances He continuously offers? His silence isn't rejection. It might be the space where your soul learns to tune in to His deeper, more constant frequency. He is listening. The question is, are you listening back? They stood under the vast, silent canvas of the night sky, stars scattered like diamond dust across the black velvet. He was old now, his hair silvered by the harsh sun and the relentless march of years. She too felt the deep ache of time in her bones, the barrenness that spoke louder than any hope. This wasn't the first time they had gazed upwards, not the first time they had counted the impossible, glittering multitude. Each star represented a promise, a word spoken by God Himself. So shall your descendants be. Genesis 15:5. He had believed it then, in that moment of divine encounter, and the Scripture tells us something profound happened because of that simple, radical belief. It was credited to him as righteousness. Genesis 15:6. But belief is often tested in the long, slow crucible of reality. Decades had passed. The youthful vigor that once fueled their journey from was gone. The promise, once bright as a morning star, now seemed like a distant, mocking light, swallowed by the vast emptiness of their empty arms. You feel it too, don't you? That gnawing doubt when God's promise for your life clashes head-on with the undeniable facts you see, touch, and feel. You look at the barrenness of your situation. Maybe it's a relationship that won't heal, a financial wilderness that shows no sign of spring, a dream that feels permanently deferred, a body that carries chronic pain, and the sheer impossibility of God's promise coming true screams louder than the still, small voice of faith. Abraham and Sarah knew this feeling intimately. They heard the quiet whispers of their neighbors, saw the pity in their eyes. Their bodies were a living testament to the insurmountable obstacle between promise and reality. You might try to help God along, just as they did with Ishmael, reaching for human solutions when divine timing feels too slow. It's a natural impulse, born of weariness and a desperate desire to see something, anything, move forward. But the story of Abraham reminds us, gently but firmly, that God's promises unfold on His timeline, not ours. The waiting isn't a sign of God's forgetfulness. It's often the very space where our faith is refined and anchored, not in the changing tides of circumstances, but in the unchanging character of the faithful one. Faith in this waiting season isn't the absence of doubt or the guarantee of immediate fulfillment. It's the quiet, persistent choice to trust God in the waiting, to believe in His power even when the physical evidence shouts contradiction. It is a powerful paradox, finding strength in stillness, seeing the invisible promise more clearly than the visible problem. It's choosing to anchor your hope not in the fertility of your circumstances, but in the limitless power and unwavering faithfulness of the One who made the stars and called them by name. Where in your life does reality seem to mock God's promise? What impossible circumstance is currently challenging your belief? Look not at the barrenness of your present, but turn your gaze upwards, towards the One who spoke the stars into existence. How can you, like Abraham, choose today to trust in God's character, His goodness, His power, His faithfulness, above the deafening noise of your current reality. Let His perfect timing become the rhythm of your faith, not a source of despair, but a quiet invitation to deeper trust. You feel the weight of the quiet. Days stretch into weeks, weeks into months, and still, the desired outcome remains distant, unseen. It's like being buried in the earth, a tiny seed dropped into the darkness, the soil heavy above you. You wonder if anything is happening at all. There are no sprouts pushing through the surface, no green shoots reaching for the sun. Just the silence, the darkness, the pressure of the ground all around. This waiting feels unproductive, perhaps even forgotten. It's easy to feel anxiety creep in, whispering doubts about whether your prayers were heard, if God sees you down here in the unseen. But beneath the surface, something vital, something miraculous is underway. While the world above sees nothing, deep within the soil, roots are beginning to form. They are thin at first, tentative tendrils reaching out into the darkness, anchoring the future life. They seek moisture, draw in unseen nutrients, establishing the essential foundation for everything that is to come. This hidden work, this unseen growth, is not merely preparation. It is survival. These roots will determine the strength of the plant when the storms inevitably arrive, its ability to withstand the winds and draw life from the deepest reserves. Your season of waiting is often like this hidden, subterranean growth. It feels unproductive because the fruit you desire isn't visible. It feels invisible because the work God is doing is not for the eyes of the world, but for the depth of your soul. It might even feel suffocating under the weight of unanswered questions or stagnant circumstances. Yet, precisely in this place of buried stillness, God is doing a crucial work within you that you cannot yet see. He isn't focused on the external sprout. He is strengthening your internal roots of faith. He is deepening your dependence on Him, cultivating a resilience that isn't just about enduring hardship, but about thriving in the midst of it. Patience is being woven into your character. Perseverance is being forged in the quiet fire of delayed hope. You are learning, perhaps slowly and painfully, that true strength isn't always in outward action, but often in the stillness of surrendered trust. The spiritual insight lies in understanding that God is often building our foundation, shaping our inner man during the very seasons we feel most buried and unproductive. The lack of visible progress above ground doesn't mean there's no vital work happening below. Sometimes growth is most profound when it's hidden from sight. He is cultivating qualities in you, a deeper peace, independent of circumstance, a steadfastness that doesn't waver when tested, a quiet confidence in His timing that no storm can shake. These are the roots that will sustain the life that is yet to break through the soil. Instead of focusing solely on the fruit you desperately want to see above ground, how can you begin to trust the unseen work God is doing within your soul during this season? What specific qualities do you sense He might be cultivating in you through the quiet, the delay, the darkness? Surrender to the soil. His hands are working there. The silence stretches on. It presses in on you, heavy and absolute. You prayed, you asked, you waited, and still nothing visibly moves. The air feels thin with unmet expectation, thick with the weight of your unanswered questions. This barren stillness, this wilderness of waiting, it becomes a fertile ground for doubt. A whisper starts, insidious and persistent. Maybe God isn't hearing. Maybe he's forgotten. Maybe he needs my help. Impatience, that restless tide, rises within your soul. It urges action, demands a sign, insists on movement, any movement, to break the suffocating quiet. Fear of being left behind, weariness from the long journey, anxiety about the future you can't control. These emotions conspire, twisting the waiting into a test you feel you're failing. This is the moment the temptation to rush becomes almost unbearable. You eye the nearest shortcut, the quickest fix, the self-made solution that promises to deliver you from the discomfort of God's timing. It feels logical, even responsible. Someone has to make things happen, right? Think of Sarah, wife of Abraham, promised a son, yet facing the relentless march of time and the barrenness of her own body. The promise felt distant, maybe even impossible. Impatience, perhaps fueled by the cultural pressure for offspring, led her down a path that seemed helpful, a practical alternative. Take Hagar, her maidservant, give her to Abraham, build a family through her. It felt like a way to assist God's promise, to speed things along. But this well-intentioned intervention birthed Ishmael, a son born of human striving rather than divine timing. A decision that introduced generations of complication and heartache into the sacred story. This is the quiet danger of stepping ahead of God. It's the spiritual parallel to building your own structure when God is laying a different foundation you cannot yet see. You create your own Ishmael, a result born of your effort, your timeline, your fear-driven strategy, and then wonder why it doesn't carry the blessing, the peace, the true inheritance of God's promised Isaac. Rushing isn't just about speed. It's often a profound, albeit often subconscious, declaration of distrust. It says, I don't believe God is capable of doing this on his own. Or, I don't believe his timing is actually perfect, so I'll just make my own timing work. Stepping ahead, even with the purest intentions, often means moving outside the protective, purposeful currents of God's perfect will. You might achieve a result, yes, but it often comes with unforeseen complications, unnecessary pain, and the deep, unsettling feeling that you're not truly where you're meant to be. God isn't slow. He is sovereign. His delays are not denials. They are often preparations of you, of the circumstances, of the very ground where his promise will bloom most gloriously. His silence is not absence. It is sometimes the loudest part of the conversation, inviting you into a deeper level of trust. Where are you feeling that internal drumbeat, that pressure to rush and fix things yourself? What quick fixes or self-made solutions are whispering your name, promising relief from the weight? Can you gently loosen your grip on the reins of control? Can you intentionally choose surrender over striving, trusting that God's way and timing are always best, even when they feel unbearably slow? Sometimes the greatest progress is found not in pushing forward, but in holding still and letting God catch up to the pace he set from the beginning. You sit in the quiet, the silence of a life that feels paused. You had the map, the plan, the dream planted deep within your spirit, a vision whispered on the wind of God's favor. But the path you walk today is not the highway you expected. It's a dusty track, perhaps even a dark, echoing enclosure. You feel stuck, unseen, maybe even forgotten. Life has taken an unexpected turn, or perhaps a violent shove away from the bright future you envisioned. Consider the journey of Joseph, a young man glowing with God's promise, gifted with dreams that spoke of elevation, honor, and blessing. He held that future in his heart, saw it in his mind's eye. Then came the betrayal, the pit dug by his own brothers, the chains of slavery dragging him away from everything he knew. He was a prince among his family, then suddenly property in a foreign land. Seasons of waiting began, not just days or weeks, but years stretching into a decade. He rose in Potiphar's house, a flicker of hope, only to be falsely accused, stripped of dignity, and thrown into the cold, unforgiving stone of a prison cell. More years passed. He helped others, hoping for remembrance, but was forgotten. His path was anything but linear. It plummeted from the warmth of his father's tent to the suffocating darkness of a pit, then twisted through the mundane toil of slavery, finally leading into the unjust confinement of a prison. He went from the favor of his father to the bottom of a pit, then to a prison cell, all while holding on to a dream God had given him. The divine promise he carried seemed, in the midst of these detours, utterly impossible. How could dreams of ruling come true from the stench of a dungeon? His life was a testament to waiting, injustice, and forgottenness. Yet, this is where the profound spiritual insight resides. God's purposes, His grand designs for our lives, often unfold not on the straight, sunlit paths we choose, but through unexpected, difficult, and lengthy detours. These weren't roadblocks. They were the very road itself. The pit wasn't an end. It was a starting point for reliance. Slavery wasn't just suffering. It was a classroom for administration. The prison wasn't just confinement. It was a training ground for patience and discernment. The waiting wasn't empty. It was preparation, teaching him leadership, wisdom, resilience, and a dependence on God in ways prosperity and ease never could. He learned to manage hardship before managing a nation, to forgive deeply before reconciling with his past, to trust God's timing when all human hope seemed lost. It was in the stripping away that he was most fully prepared for the building up. Sometimes the greatest equipping for ascent happens in the descent. Here, in the quiet echo of your own unexpected detour, comes the gentle call to reflection. How can you reframe your current season of delay, difficulty, or unseen waiting? What if it's not punishment, not a sign of abandonment, but potentially part of God's larger, sovereign plan unfolding? What if this difficult path is the very place where God is teaching you lessons of leadership, resilience, or dependence that you desperately need for the future He envisions for you? How is this season preparing you, shaping you, refining you for a future you cannot yet see, a destination reached only by traveling this unexpected road? Trust that the author is writing, even when the chapter feels dark and the narrative seems broken. You sit in the crucible, the heat rising around you. This place isn't what you expected when you prayed for growth. This is the waiting. It feels less like fertile ground and more like a furnace. The silence presses in, heavy and suffocating, revealing the frantic need for control you didn't realize gripped your soul. You planned, you strategized, you pushed, and here you are, stalled. Impatience flares, sharp and hot, exposing how thin your veneer of calm truly is. Doubt whispers insidious questions, chipping away at the foundation of faith you thought was solid rock. Is God even here? Does He hear? Does He care about this long, empty stretch? This waiting season is a refiner's fire. It's intense, it's uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel like a blessing. It feels like a test you're failing. But the spiritual insight here is profound and often missed in the pain. The heat isn't meant to consume you, but to cleanse you. Like gold subjected to immense heat, the impurities rise to the surface. The self-reliance that says, "I can handle this alone," the fear of the unknown future, the need to dictate the timeline. These elements, toxic to pure faith, are being brought up to be skimmed away. This isn't destruction, it's purification. It's a dismantling of what is fragile and false, making room for something enduring and true. You discover that sometimes the greatest movement happens when you are forced to stand still. Strength is found not in striving, but in remaining in the heat with Him. God is not using this pressure to break your spirit, but to make it resilient. He is forging your character, molding it closer to the image of Christ, who Himself knew seasons of wilderness and waiting before His ultimate purpose was revealed. This process is painful, yes, but it serves a divine purpose. It's revealing the hidden places within you that still cling to earthly anchors instead of heavenly hope. What is this difficult season of waiting revealing about you? What impurities of fear, insecurity, or the desperate need for control is God lovingly bringing to the surface in this moment? How can you allow this refining process to do its work, trusting that the refiner's fire, though hot, is leading you to a faith that shines with His glory, a purer reflection of His unwavering grace? Lean into the discomfort. He is right there with you in the flames. You sit in the quiet, the calendar page a stark reminder of how long you've waited. The knot in your stomach tightens with every unanswered question about the future. Your mind races, trying to piece together scenarios, calculate possibilities, force an outcome into existence. Your grip is tight on the situation, on the timeline you envisioned, on the way things should be. You tell yourself you're being proactive, responsible, maybe even faithful by pushing. But underneath the urgency, there's a weariness, a low hum of anxiety that never quite fades. This striving, this relentless effort to control the unfolding story, feels less like strength and more like a subtle form of fear. Fear that if you don't manage it all, it will fall apart. You've wrestled on your knees, poured out your heart, presented your case to God. And the silence sometimes feels louder than any answer. It's in this space between the prayer offered and the outcome desired that the deepest work of faith often happens. Not in finding the strength to do more, but in finding the courage to surrender more. True peace in this waiting season, this wilderness walk, isn't found in grasping tighter or seeing the finish line. It's found in the quiet, profound act of releasing your white-knuckled hold. Surrender isn't giving up on hope. It's giving your hope to the one who is hope itself. It's the spiritual insight that letting go of control is not defeat, but the unexpected pathway to genuine freedom. You release your detailed blueprint for the future, the how, the when, the who, and place it into the capable, loving hands of God. This isn't passive resignation, slumped shoulders accepting the inevitable. This is active trust. It is a defiant declaration against anxiety, proclaiming that God is good, God is sovereign, and God is actively working on your behalf, weaving together threads you cannot even see, even when the canvas seems blank or chaotic. It's like releasing the tiller in a storm-tossed boat, not because you don't care about the destination, but because you finally trust the captain more than your own ability to navigate the waves. It is the gentle paradox. In surrendering your agenda, you discover the peace of His. In ceasing your striving, you enter His rest. What burdens of control, what anxieties about outcomes or timelines are you still carrying today? What tight grip needs to loosen? Can you, in a quiet moment, physically and spiritually, open your hands? Imagine placing that heavy situation, the uncertainty, the fear, the desired outcome, into the open palms of the Almighty God. Release the timeline you've set. Release the way you think it should look. What does it feel like, even for just a moment, to simply rest in His control? To acknowledge, deeply in your soul, that He is not only capable of handling it all, but that He is profoundly trustworthy with every detail of your life. Allow His peace, the peace that surpasses your understanding, to guard your heart and mind as you learn the sacred art of surrender. You stand on the path, surrounded by trees. The leaves are thick, the branches dense. You can see the ground immediately in front of you, perhaps a few feet ahead, but the path curves, disappears behind thickets, or is simply lost in the shadowed distance. You feel boxed in, limited. This is how life feels sometimes, isn't it? Like standing in a dense forest, seeing only the immediate obstacles, the next few steps, the frustrating stillness right where you are. You can't see the twist in the trail that's coming, the unexpected stream you'll need to cross, or the beautiful clearing that waits just beyond the bend. The uncertainty presses in, heavy as the forest air. But somewhere, far above the canopy, unseen by your straining eyes, there is a vantage point. From there, the trees shrink, the paths become clear lines, and the entire landscape unfolds like a map. Obstacles you couldn't see are visible. Connections between seemingly unrelated trails become obvious, and the destination clearing is not a distant dream, but a discernible point in the vast panorama. This is God's perspective. While you are navigating the intricate, immediate steps on the ground, He sees from an infinite height. He sees all time, past, present, and future, laid out before Him. He sees not just the tree blocking your way now, but why that tree is there, what needs to happen because of it, and what hidden blessing it might be protecting you from or preparing you for down the line. His wisdom isn't just greater than yours, it is infinite. It encompasses every possibility, every ripple effect of every event, every intricate detail of the universe working in concert. When a delay feels like a wall, God sees it as a necessary pause for alignments you couldn't orchestrate, for lessons you couldn't learn any other way, or for something that needs to be removed from the path entirely before you can safely proceed. His timing isn't slow. It is perfect because it is rooted in this complete divine knowledge. He is not reacting to circumstances. He is weaving a master tapestry, and He sees the whole pattern while you only see the thread in your hand. The spiritual insight is profound and often uncomfortable. God's timing doesn't align with your finite understanding or impatient desires because it's based on His infinite wisdom and complete knowledge, not your limited view of the forest floor. He knows what needs to be in place, what seeds need time to grow in the darkness, what storms need to pass, and what divine appointments need to converge. Trusting His perspective means accepting that sometimes the clearest path forward is found when you stop trying to see it all yourself and simply keep walking by faith. It's in the moments you feel most lost, most confused in the waiting, that the quiet call echoes. Can you choose in this moment to remember God's higher, infinite perspective? Can you lift your spiritual gaze above your immediate circumstances, even if just for a moment? How does holding on to the truth of His complete knowledge, that He sees it all, knows it all, and is working it all together, help you release the heavy burden of needing to understand every why behind the delay you face right now? Can you breathe out the need for immediate clarity and breathe in the quiet confidence of His perfect timing? You sit with the stillness, the quiet stretching out longer than expected. Another day ends, and the prayer remains unanswered in the way you envisioned. The waiting feels heavy, like a cloak woven with threads of impatience and maybe a little doubt. You watch others move forward, their paths clear, their doors opening, while you stand rooted, seemingly unproductive, asking silently, why the pause? Why the delay? It feels like a wilderness season you didn't choose, a barren stretch where nothing seems to grow or change. Your heart whispers, am I forgotten here? Is this time wasted? The anxiety begins to tap at the edges of your peace, suggesting that perhaps God isn't listening, or worse, that you aren't worth the answer. You clutch your empty hands, wishing they were busy, wishing you were doing something, anything, instead of simply being here, waiting. But look closer at the ground beneath your feet. The seed buried in the earth isn't idle. It's gathering strength, building roots unseen, preparing for the burst of life that will come in its season. The pause isn't empty. It's pregnant with divine activity. God isn't just waiting with you. He is actively working in you and around you. This quiet season is not a sign of His absence, but often a sign of His careful, deliberate hand. Sometimes this pause is preparation. He is equipping you with strength, wisdom, or character you need for the path ahead, a path too grand or too challenging for the person you are today. You are being molded, like clay on the potter's wheel, taking shape for a vessel designed for His specific purposes. Sometimes it is protection, a gentle nudge away from a wrong turn, a hidden danger, a path that looks right but leads astray. He shields you from consequences or connections you cannot foresee, guiding you around potential storms you couldn't weather yet. Sometimes it is purification, the quiet fire of waiting, burning away anxieties, refining your faith, stripping away layers of self-reliance so you learn to lean fully on Him. Like silver refined in the furnace, you emerge purer, stronger, more reflective of His glory. And often, it's about alignment. God is orchestrating circumstances, moving other people, setting pieces into place on a chessboard far larger than your immediate view. Your timing is tethered to a divine symphony involving countless other instruments and movements. He is never idle in the waiting seasons. He is actively working behind the scenes for your good and His glory. You stand still to be moved forward in ways you can't yet see. So, instead of viewing this waiting as meaningless or punitive, a sign of His absence or indifference, what if you shifted your perspective? What if this stillness is sacred ground? How can you prayerfully ask God to reveal the purpose behind the pause? What might He be protecting you from right now, even as you long to move forward? What specific character trait, skill, or spiritual depth might He be preparing you for, a readiness you couldn't gain in motion? What is He purifying in you? An old fear, a limiting belief, a dependence on something other than Him? Lean into the quiet, not with frustration, but with curiosity and faith. Trust that the God who began a good work in you is faithful to complete it. even when his method involves the unexpected gift of stillness. He is turning your waiting into working, your pause into purpose, and your silence into a sacred space where his unseen hand is shaping your future story. He stands on the windswept hill, the cool oil still slicking his brow. Just moments ago, the prophet Samuel declared him, David, the youngest son, the shepherd boy, as the next king of Israel. A promise thunders in the quiet air, a destiny whispered directly from the heart of God, sealed with oil and witnessed by his family. You can almost feel the weight of that moment, the sudden shift from tending sheep to holding the future of a nation. It is real. It is confirmed. Surely the palace awaits just beyond the horizon, the path clear and swift. But the palace doesn't come. Not yet. The days stretch into weeks, then months, then years. He returns to the fields, the echo of king, a strange counterpoint to the bleating of sheep. He faces Goliath, the giant, a mountain of fear, threatening the very fabric of Israel, and overcomes him with a stone and a sling, fueled by faith. He becomes a hero, celebrated and adored. Yet even this victory doesn't lead to the throne. Instead, it leads him into the court of King Saul, a place of simmering madness and deep insecurity, where the Anointed One serves the one God is replacing. And then the running begins. Saul's jealousy erupts into a violent rage, seeking David's life. The Anointed One, the promised king, spends over a decade not ruling, but hiding. He lives in caves, in wilderness plains, in foreign lands. Every sunrise is a potential discovery, every shadow a possible threat. He is a leader without an army, a king without a kingdom, living hand to mouth, relying on the loyalty of a few and the sheer, raw mercy of God. The promise feels impossibly distant, a mirage shimmering in the heat of his relentless pursuit. How can the confirmed word of God lead you into such a season of profound uncertainty and danger? This feels like a divine contradiction. God promised rule, but delivered wilderness. Yet, the wilderness was preparing the ruler. The hiding was refining the heart. Perhaps you know this feeling. You've received a word, a promise, a clear sense of direction from God. You prayed, you felt the confirmation, the anointing of His peace or guidance. And then, nothing happened as you expected. Or worse, things got harder. The door you thought would open slammed shut. The path you saw stretching clear ahead dissolved into a fog of doubt and difficulty. Like David, you are holding on to a promise while living in a cave of fear, facing giants of anxiety, or running from the Saul of disappointment. David's story is a stark, powerful reminder that God's confirmation of a promise is not always a guarantee of immediate, easy fulfillment. The waiting season is not an empty void or a sign that you misheard God. It is often the crucible, the wilderness journey, the hidden years where God builds the character, deepens the trust, and prepares the ground for the promise to take root and flourish. The very circumstances that seem to contradict the promise are often the means by which God is working, shaping you into the person capable of receiving and stewarding what He has promised. Are you currently in a season of waiting, clinging to a promise that feels impossibly far off, perhaps even threatened by the giants and Sauls in your life? Look at David, anointed by grace, refined by hardship. His journey wasn't straight. It was a winding path, through valleys of the shadow of death, yet God was with him, teaching him to trust in the dark. How can David's long, difficult wait encourage your heart today? reminding you that the delay is not a denial, and the hardship doesn't negate God's word, but is often part of the divine process, leading to its eventual, glorious fulfillment. You stand on the shore, watching the horizon, waiting for the ship you sent out so long ago to return. But instead of a sail, the sky darkens. The wind whips your hair across your face. The waves begin to rise, crashing against the sand, pulling the ground from beneath your feet. This isn't the peace you prayed for. You asked for calm seas, a clear path, a definite sign of arrival. Instead, the storm rages around you, and the waiting continues, amplified by the chaos. This is the paradox of the journey sometimes, begging for stillness, yet finding yourself tossed about in a tempest. The anxiety tightens its grip, a cold fist in your chest. Every crash of a wave sounds like a question mark hurled at your faith. Where is God in this? Why is the answer taking so long? Does he even see how I'm drowning in this uncertainty? This isn't just external noise. It's the internal storm mirroring the external one. The fear whispers insidious lies. You must be doing something wrong. Your faith isn't strong enough. You're alone in this boat. You feel the urge to bail water frantically, to fight the waves with your own strength, to control the uncontrollable, because anything feels better than the sheer terror of being adrift. But the truth, the powerful, anchor-deep truth, is that peace in waiting isn't the absence of the storm. It's learning to rest in the boat with Jesus, even while the waves crash around you. It's the quiet strength that whispers, "He is here." Remember that small boat years ago on a Galilean lake. The disciples were terrified. The storm was furious, and Jesus was asleep on a cushion in the stern. Peace wasn't the calm sea. It was Jesus in the boat. When they finally cried out, he stood and rebuked the wind and the waves, and there was a great calm. But the peace was available the whole time, not just in the quiet afterward, but in the terrifying moments before, simply because he was present. This is the supernatural peace that comes from knowing God is in control, not just in the big picture, but in the terrifying details of your storm. He loves you with an unfailing, relentless love that the mightiest waves cannot extinguish, and he is working all things, even this season of waiting and uncertainty, for your ultimate good. Romans 8:28. It's not a forced calm, a clenching of teeth and pretending everything is fine. It is a deep-seated trust, an anchor cast into the very nature of God himself, that holds your soul steady, even when the world around you is spinning out of control. This divine peace isn't just a feeling, it's a guardian. It stands watch over your heart and your mind, protecting them against the relentless assault of anxiety and fear that the waiting so often brings. Philippians 4:6-7. It says to the swirling thoughts of what if and why me, peace, be still. It allows you to breathe deeply, to rest your weary head, and to continue walking by faith, even when you don't have all the answers. Even when the path ahead is obscured by the spray of the waves. The spiritual insight is profound and often missed in our human striving. God's peace is available in the waiting, in the storm, in the uncertainty, not just when the waiting is over and the sun has returned. It is a gift given freely in the midst of the struggle. It is like finding a pool of still water in the heart of a raging river. It is the gentle paradox of finding rest in the midst of relentless motion. Maybe the striving for a storm-free life is what's robbing you of peace. Maybe the search for absolute certainty is blinding you to the steady presence available right now. Peace is not the absence of noise, but the presence of God in the noise. So ask yourself, in the quiet space of your heart, what practices help you access this supernatural peace during this anxious season? Is it spending time in prayer, not just asking for rescue, but simply sitting in His presence? Is it reading His promises, letting them sink into the fearful places? Is it quiet worship, lifting your eyes from the waves to the One who commands them? How can you intentionally invite His presence into your moments of fear and uncertainty, allowing His peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding, to be your anchor? Let the waves crash. Find your rest in the boat with Him. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper waiting for your stillness. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You stare at the horizon of your life, and it seems flat, unmoving. The answers you've longed for haven't arrived. The circumstances you prayed would shift remain stubbornly fixed. Day after day unfolds much like the last, and a heavy cloak of discouragement settles upon your shoulders. It feels like nothing is happening. You measure progress by what you can see, by the visible shifts and tangible results. When they are absent, the quiet whispers of doubt begin their work. Has God forgotten? Is my faith misplaced? Is He even listening? This waiting, this apparent stagnation, feels like a wilderness where the path forward is lost in a haze of uncertainty. You are standing still, and the world seems to stand still with you. This feeling of being stuck, of seeing no movement, no change, no progress, is a common valley we all traverse in our journey of faith. It's the time when the seed of hope feels buried too deep to ever sprout. But just because we don't see God working doesn't mean He isn't. His hand is often at work in ways invisible to us, rearranging circumstances like unseen currents beneath the surface of the sea, gently changing hearts in conversations you haven't yet had, preparing resources in places you don't know exist, orchestrating divine appointments that will feel like chance encounters, quietly closing doors that needed to be shut for your protection, and opening others you couldn't even see were there. It's like watching the surface of a pond and seeing only stillness, unaware of the bustling life and intricate activity happening just beneath the reflection. The most profound work is often happening in the unseen realm, like the roots of a mighty oak growing deeper and stronger long before the tree reaches for the sky. This is the realm of faith, believing that God is actively involved and working on your behalf, even when all evidence suggests otherwise. Even when your eyes see only the same unchanged landscape. He is not inactive. He is simply working in ways you cannot yet perceive. Sometimes, the greatest movement happens in the deepest stillness. The waiting isn't empty time. It's God's hidden preparation. The spiritual insight here is profound and transformative. Faith is not seeing and believing. It is believing and then seeing God's work unfold, often much later, often in hindsight, like reading the last chapter of a story you only just began. Hebrews 11:1 calls faith the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. It is the quiet certainty in your heart that outweighs the visible lack in your life. It's the anchor that holds when the waves of doubt crash against you, because the anchor is fastened to an unseen shore, the faithfulness of God. You are called to hold on to this truth when the silence feels deafening and the stillness feels permanent. The call to reflection is this: when you feel discouraged by the lack of visible progress, how can you choose to believe in the unseen hand of God at work? Can you trust that He is moving, preparing the way, orchestrating your deliverance or your blessing, even when you can't detect it with your physical senses? Can you whisper yes to the unseen work? You trace the condensation on the cold glass, your breath fogging the pain, mirroring the fog in your soul. Another day melts into evening. Another unanswered prayer echoes in the quiet room. The waiting stretches out like a vast, flat desert, endless and featureless. You've measured time by milestones that never arrive, by hopes that bloom only to wither in the harsh sun of delay. Anxiety coils in your gut, whispering questions you desperately try to silence. Did I miss the sign? Is He even listening? Am I being punished? Or maybe I'm just forgotten. This season feels less like a pause and more like a permanent standstill, a wilderness you're condemned to wander, without a clear path or a glimpse of the promised land. The ache of expectation unmet is a constant companion, heavy as stones in your pockets, dragging you down. You watch others move forward, their stories unfolding seemingly on schedule, while yours remains stubbornly blank, a chapter left unwritten. Doubt, like a dry wind, kicks up sand, stinging your eyes, making it hard to see anything beyond the immediate, barren landscape. Yet, as the seasons turned, as life continued its unpredictable flow, you saw it. The job you didn't get would have led you down a dead end. The relationship that ended protected you from deeper hurt. The opportunity that vanished made space for a better one you couldn't have imagined. What felt like a painful delay at the time, a frustrating detour in your carefully planned route, was actually God's perfect timing. He wasn't denying you. He was protecting you from something you couldn't see. He wasn't withholding. He was preparing you for something greater. A role, a blessing, a season you weren't yet ready for. He wasn't indifferent. He was positioning you precisely where you needed to be for His larger, wiser plan to unfold, often involving people and events that had to transpire first, like pieces on a cosmic chessboard you weren't privy to. This is the profound spiritual insight that often lies hidden in the waiting. God's timeline is not dictated by our human urgency, our anxious deadlines, or our limited expectations. It is governed by His perfect knowledge and His sovereign will. He sees the beginning from the end, the complex tapestry where our single thread is interwoven with countless others. His timing isn't just good. It is always, without exception, perfect. He is never early, rushing you into something before you're prepared or before the necessary elements are in place. He is never late, missing the window of opportunity, because He is the one who opens and closes the windows, who orchestrates the moments. He is always precisely on time, according to His wise and loving plan, a plan that considers far more than just your immediate desires. Clinging to this truth in the midst of the current delay, when the desert feels endless and the silence deafening, is perhaps one of the most powerful acts of faith you can undertake. It's surrender masquerading as patience, trust taking the form of stillness. Remembering his past faithfulness, how he redeemed those difficult delays before, how he turned what felt like failure into foundation, how he used the wilderness to refine and strengthen you. That remembrance is a powerful anchor for your soul right now. It's a stone of remembrance from a battle already won, a reminder that the God who navigated your past is the same God charting your future. The God who provided water in the last desert will provide it in this one too. How can remembering his past faithfulness strengthen your trust in his timing for your current situation? Let the echoes of his past perfect timings silence the anxious whispers of the present. Let the memory of his provision in the wilderness become the lamp guiding your steps through this current period of waiting. His promises meet your fear of delay with the assurance of his perfect plan. He is not asking for your understanding of the why right now, but for your surrender to the when. The deepest peace in the waiting comes not from knowing the future, but from trusting the one who holds it. You sit in the waiting, the silence stretching thin as brittle glass. The calendar pages turn, unmarked by the breakthrough you've prayed for, the answer you've longed to hear. Weariness is a heavy cloak on your shoulders, cynicism a sharp whisper in your ear. Did God forget? Is his timing truly good or just painfully slow? It's here in the long, empty stretches that hope is tested, stretched, sometimes frayed to a single, desperate thread. The temptation to simply drop the rope, to sink into the despair of never, is strong. It feels like giving up is the only logical response to this unending stillness. But biblical hope, it is a different creature entirely. It is not a passive wish, like hoping it won't rain on your picnic. It is a confident expectation, a deep, unwavering certainty rooted not in favorable circumstances, but in the unshakable character and the proven promises of God himself. Imagine it, not a fragile balloon tossed by the wind, but an anchor, heavy and sure, plunging deep through the turbulent waters of your present moment. This is the hope the Scripture speaks of, an anchor for the soul, steadfast and certain, reaching into the very presence of God beyond the veil. Hebrews 6:19-20. Your tiny boat might be rocked violently, the shore a distant, invisible dream, yet the anchor holds firm because its grip is on eternity, on the one who is the anchor. This hope is born from remembrance. It's remembering that God is not like man, that he does not lie or change his mind. It's replaying the ancient truth that he is faithful, that he always keeps his promises, even when they feel delayed. It's clinging to words whispered across centuries, like Jeremiah 29:11, that his plans for you are inherently good, plans for welfare and a future filled with hope, not plans for calamity. Sometimes the delay is not the absence of a plan, but the precise unfolding of a better one. This steadfast hope allows you to endure the waiting, not with clenched teeth and grim resignation, but with a quiet, resilient perseverance, sometimes even with a mysterious, unforced joy. Why? Because this hope whispers the truth that your labor in the Lord, every prayer whispered, every tear shed, every step taken in faith, is never, ever in vain. What looks like a wasted season is, in God's hands, a season of deep foundational strengthening. The spiritual insight is clear, sharp as mountain air. Hope in Christ is the indispensable fuel that sustains you through the long, parched seasons of waiting. Without it, the journey feels impossible, the spirit withers. But with it, each sunrise is a quiet declaration that God is still on his throne, still working, still good. Waiting feels like being unseen, but it's often when God is most intimately at work in the hidden places of your heart. So lean in closer now. In this very moment of waiting, what specific promises of God are you actively choosing to cling to? Name them. Whisper them back to your weary soul. How can you intentionally, actively nurture and strengthen this anchor of hope today? Is it through quiet repetition of his faithfulness? Through seeking stories of his past deliverance? Through simply breathing deeply and reminding yourself again and again that his word is certain, his character unchanging, his love an ocean that will not recede? Your hope is not wishful thinking. It is confident expectation in the God who has never and will never fail. As the last echo of unanswered prayer fades, you find yourself here. Perhaps the silence that once felt vast and empty now feels quieter, less like a void and more like a hallowed space where God himself is present. The door you've been waiting on, the one that feels stubbornly closed, doesn't seem quite as final. Instead, a whisper rises. Maybe this isn't a barrier, but a threshold. A threshold God is preparing you to cross in his perfect time, in his perfect way. The questions haven't vanished. They still sit there, quiet companions in the stillness. When? How long? Why not yet? But now they are met not with panic or despair, but with a deeper, settled calm, an assurance that roots you, a quiet certainty that you are not forgotten, you are not alone. You were never, not for a single breath, outside of his loving gaze. God's faithfulness, you are learning, isn't measured by the speed of his answers, but by the unwavering certainty of his character. He is good. He is love. He is sovereign over every detail. And crucially, breathtakingly, he is present. Even in the stillness, the waiting, the uncertainty, he is there. His presence is the true sanctuary in the waiting place. It is the shelter when the storms of doubt rage, the quiet strength humming beneath your weariness when your own reserves are depleted. He is the steady hand, unseen but certain, guiding your steps even when the path ahead is hidden by the mists of the unknown. You learn to walk not by sight, but by the feel of his presence beside you. The lessons forged in this fire of uncertainty, in the quiet crucible of delay, patience that isn't passive waiting, but active trusting, surrender that isn't defeat, but liberation, deeper trust that finds its anchor in his nature, resilience built not on grit, but on grace, an intimate, profound knowledge of his presence that surpasses understanding. These are invaluable treasures. They are gifts that could only be unwrapped in the silence, forged in the fire. You weren't standing still. You were being transformed. You weren't forgotten. You were being rooted, drawing strength from the unseen depths of his faithfulness. You weren't delayed. You were being prepared. So here, at the close of this season, breathe deeply. Release the white-knuckled grip on the need to understand it all, to control the timeline, to rush the unfolding. Simply rest. Rest in the profound, unshakable knowledge that the God who began this good work in you is utterly faithful to complete it. Philippians 1:6. His timing is not a reflection of his reluctance to act, but of his perfect wisdom, his perfect vision for your life, and his great, immeasurable love for you. The story isn't over. The promise whispered to your heart, the hope you cling to, it is not forgotten. And even here, in the silence where answers are yet to bloom, His presence sings over you. It is a lullaby of peace, quieting the anxious heart, a hymn of assurance, resounding in the soul, a symphony of love, orchestrating every moment, even the pauses. May you find true rest, deep abiding trust, and unwavering hope, nestled in the arms of your faithful God, the one who holds every moment, every delay, and every future blessing securely in His loving hands. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.